Good morning and welcome to the Love Power Show. And we're going to get right to it. There are a lot of things in the news. And to my right, in the studio, Jabril Shabazz. He's fired up today. I can look at him and tell. Next to Jabril, he's ready to go. Thel Price. In fact, everybody looks like they're ready to go. Omar Baruti and Paul Outlaw. In the studio, I am your humble moderator and host. There's so much in the news. And where do we want to start? Listen, someone just called let me do this real quick, just called Dr. Richmond's show. And here's a definite, and there are 2 or 3, 4 or 5 definitions of racism, is that right? But they're pretty much essentially the same. Is that right? And here's a definition that is accepted at the University of Memphis, is being taught by the professors. Here's one definition right here. To caller who called a moment ago, racism. A racist. Racism is actually a social construction, constructed by guys like Johann Blumenbach with that one-drop rule, all that, the so-called white man. It is a belief that your race is superior to all others and that you have the power to control your destiny and everybody else's. That is the essential definition. And that definition is based in power. So when we get into racism, this is something we have to, in terms of the definition and who's a racist, who's not a racist. But also in the news we had a cop shoot a young man who was going to give him his driver's license. Shot him, and what really bothers me about that, the young African-American lying on the ground talking about, I'm sorry, but white man has shot you. And you talking about you sorry. White man shot, excuse my French, the shucks out of you.
What's your language?
And we have, and in the interest of time, I'm excited too, Jabril. So, yeah. You can't tell. But look, one last thing. In Ferguson, what's the sheriff's name? Tom Jackson apologized to the family of Michael Brown. I'm not going to go into the apology, but it was rejected. They weren't moved by the apology. And then he turned around and made a move to pull the Captain Dorian Johnson move. I'm just going to go out here and march with the people. I'm going to march with the people. You know, totally rejected. They were saying, get back, get out. So you think you like Captain Dorian, the African American who's the sheriff, but march with African Americans. There's a stark difference there. Then we've got some information about Warden's budget. And I want to go to you first, Brother Jabril. Throw down on the subject matter, pick one. We were saying some things about Ferguson. Go ahead.
I get started, but I want to acknowledge one of our warriors, you know, that had grown in this past week. Brother Lando Matthews, you know, I call him Mr. Reparation.
Yeah.
You know, he's been the person who was the other vanguard position, you know, at least 25 years that I know of.
Yeah.
You know, and you've always spoke about reparation, you know, and I just want to acknowledge his homegoing and his connection to the ancestry, you know, at this time. You know, they're going to funeralize him next week sometime.
Okay.
But as far as all this stuff in the news, you know, a lot of news is diversionary tactics, you know, to keep us discussing certain things, you know, without putting a program in place, you know, and putting issues, you know, labeling them number 1 issue, number 2 issue, and following the protocol of how you're going to approach, you know, the system, you know, to speak truth to power, so to speak. I'm taken off by a lot of things that was in the news this week, you know. I don't know, I like to get the essence of what Attorney General Holden and the conflict between him and the president, whatever that was. Was it conflict or was it whatever, you know? Because I see some things there, you know, that hadn't played out, you know, in the media and so forth, you know. That sheriff, you know, I don't know, when it comes to Ferguson, You know, that whole thing is just turned on this topsy-turvy. It started off wrong, and it's been wrong and ever since then. You know, when you're dealing with a people who stand on ignorant principles, you know, it's like trying to negotiate with a high school, elementary, or junior high schooler. You know, because these people are not, they don't comprehend logic. You know, they don't have the wherewithal to show to shine a logical eye on the situation itself. So when you're trying to talk to them and concern them about, you know, what we need is an indictment on the person who shot the young man down, and the system just call and never give a response to that. See, here grown people are out here trying to negotiate with junior high school people, and they don't have a clue on how do you approach logic in a system like this. You know, we're in trouble because, you know, grown folk have a hard time trying to talk to junior high schoolers because they don't have a clue of what it takes to rid ourselves of the ills in society or in furniture. You know, here's a man here that's going to put a band-aid on the situation because he's going to walk down the street imitating the highway patrol brother.
Right, the African American community. Who did that, right.
You know, well, people accept him because he's a part of the community. Here's a foreigner come in there to imitate this whole, that to me is just elementary, man.
And not just a part of the community, represents himself thusly. Organic, real, in that sense. I want to come back to you with a question, but Thale, you want to go to you next because you have something about the city budget and our present incumbent mayor.
Well, Wallace, what I want to talk about is the conference that we went to yesterday. Wallace and I attended the 99th meeting of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. It was a 5-day adventure at the Peabody, and yesterday was the closing day, and I had a chance to go down there to meet with nationally known historical scholars, you know, from across the nation. They were here in our city, and I had the pleasure of speaking with a few of the attendees, Dr. Bynum from Purdue University, Dr. Benson from Southern University. These two gentlemen were amongst the many speakers that we had here in our city, and they weren't just here in the city, you know, visiting Beale Street in Graceland. They actually sat around the water cooler and took a look at our city, and they offered not just critiques, but some solutions. So I invited a host of these attendees to help us in our effort to enhance the city, to make changes in Memphis, because the city officials, and specifically the Warden administration, have offered no solutions to the many problems that befriend our city. You know, it's time for the meetings to stop. It's time for the community organizations that you say you have in place and down on paper, you know, that don't exist and don't function. It's the difference between having a organization on paper and implementing this organization's agenda. As for Memphis being the poorest urban community in the nation, there are no plans, and you hear from your city leaders daily. They have no plans. They don't have a clue of what to do. No answers, no solutions. So if they can't do it, then it's up to the citizens to have somebody in offices that can do it. If you're the mayor or you're a city council person and you're not offering any solutions to these vast problems, then my personal recommendation is a recall. You know,
Want to come back to you on that? Brother Omar Baruti, pick one.
You know, first let me make an announcement. Memphis Quantum International is having its first Friday event October the 3rd. And this is a fundraiser to help with our program that we deal with when we deal with our children in the community.
Okay.
But let me pick this topic. You had thrown this out. The mayor, not the mayor, but the police chief of Ferguson, Missouri, came with a public apology, and I listened to the apology several times, trying to sift the nature of the apology. And then I go back and reflect on the Bible. It said, "Your kingdom has been weighed in the balance and found wanting." And this was in reference to Nebuchadnezzar. This man knows that his job, his future is weighed in the balance of these people, because they're registering to vote in large numbers. And if they do what they intend to do, which is recall all the elected officials, and if they recall the elected officials, when they recall the mayor, they can't recall him because he's not elected, but when they recall the mayor and the city council official and put new people in, the mayor appoints the person that appoints the police chief. So if they put in somebody that's sensitive to the needs of the population in Ferguson, that means that the city manager who appointed the police chief is going to get rid of that police chief and put somebody in there that can better take care of the needs of the citizens of Ferguson, Missouri. So he knows his job is on the line.
Sure.
But his job needs to be on the line because he should not be in the job in the first place.
They're right.
They also know that there's going to be a change of the guard in the police department. They're going to make a more aggressive effort to put in police officers who are more sensitive to the needs of the Ferguson community. And when you look at it right now, the Justice Department is still in Ferguson. They've got town hall meetings talking to people who are, some of them don't even live there no more. But one man testified that he was harassed by the police because they didn't like the manner in which he walked down the street. They gave him a $1,000 fine.
Okay.
And after that he moved.
Okay. Yeah.
Not that he was doing anything illegal, but because of that, $1,000 out of his pocket, and he felt like, what was the reason for it? And it was upheld in court. That you were walking down the street in a manner that's, that's...
Yeah. Well, also this police chief said that he was not stepping down, had no intentions of stepping down, and that he was in this for the long haul. He said, "This is mine, I own it." He also made an interesting statement. I'm sitting here looking at the screen, that the outcome, the turnout of this event was going to be not what people think it is. Essentially said it was going to be to the positive. Now, I'm puzzled by that statement. I'm puzzled. Go ahead.
The outcome is going to be a short run. Because he won't be there once these people awake. They are coming out in large numbers. They intend to do something in Ferguson. And it may be a sign of things to come.
Sure.
Right.
And they need to do something in Ferguson.
Okay.
But not just in Ferguson, like Brother Thel said, it needs to go across the country. Memphis needs to be another spot for that. Chicago.
Right.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, they're militarized police departments all around the nation. Ferguson is just a sign of what's to come.
Okay. Now, and I'm not calling for any foolishness, but hopefully Ferguson can be a catalyst, essentially like you all are saying, for change across this nation, this country. Go ahead.
And the other thing too is
Come
this.
on in after we finish, Paul.
What they're looking at too is that many of those shopkeepers, those business people,
Yes.
are losing business.
Right.
People are afraid to walk
No.
down the street.
Right.
They're not bicycling anymore. They're
Right.
not spending money.
Right.
So it's a serious economic impact on that system.
Yes.
And the mayor knows that.
Yeah.
They know that.
And there's something in the air too, and that's what you're saying. The people sense it.
Yes.
Come on, Paul.
Well, in this system, their God is the currency. So if you attack them in their pockets, they're going to make some changes.
Oh, yeah.
But we have to recognize, too, that whatever we do, we're talking about, we're not entertaining any foolishness. We're not saying that we want people to go out and do some foolish things.
Right.
But we have to recognize who we're dealing with. Anything we do, like walking down the street, is going to be foolish to them, and they're going to create issues. And if we're not sound-minded people, we're going to fall into those traps.
Yeah.
We have to recognize that the power of us being together collectively always makes the change. If we look back at history, every time we band together as a people, collectively, there's a change. Because they know that they've set up a system that if we don't band together, they will always rule. And when we don't band together, the little percentages that they have that are band together makes the differences and makes the changes, and we end up living in a system that's ruled by their decisions. But if we band together, their whole system that they've set up against us will go against them.
Okay, okay, we've got about 12 minutes, let's move with the quickness. I want to make this position a little clearer. What we're talking about is planning, strategies, tactics, and an approach to all of the above is what we're talking about. That means a scientific program that brings about change, that brings certain individuals to the table to negotiate and compromise when you get to that point is what we're talking about. Okay, Jabril, in looking at the situation in Ferguson, can we, well, we're talking about tactics, sort of expect some kind of provocation, provoking the people to do some foolish things by which this will have augment, because it appears that time moving, people losing interest, and as time goes on, maybe people get frustrated and lose control, and some kind of provoking the people to do some of the things we're talking about.
You know,
is that something we can look
You know,
in the future?
I just
look
hope
at
that the people don't get too tired too soon, you know, and start dropping off. You
Yeah.
know. I hope they maintain a firm coalition there that can keep the issue on the forefront. You know, one thing that I hope for us here in Memphis is that we need an organization, a couple of people from Memphis to be a part of that coalition there in Ferguson, so we can learn from whatever the criteria they're putting together. Whatever that is, we can learn from that, and we may be able to use some of that here, you know, in an effort for our own liberation here. And, you know, and it's going to be done city by city, block by block, state by state, you know. But all of that is a worthwhile endeavor for us to lend our voice to what is necessary for us to come up out of the ashes that we're in and become totally liberated, you know. That crap, well, anyway, yeah, racism is racism, you know, and, you know, you know, the battle that we have before us is always been racism, you know. I'm going in now, brother. I was going somewhere, but I have to.
Regroup and I'll come back to you on that, okay? Now, how can, that's a good idea that Jabril just mentioned. So how can we here in Memphis use some of the approaches that's being used in Ferguson politically here in Memphis in terms of Memphis city government? Bell Price.
Wallace, listeners, the overall poverty rate in the Memphis metro area is 19.8%, 29.2% for blacks, 38.3% for Hispanics, and 8.4% for whites. You know, it's disgraceful. And it's apparent that the Ward administration, you know, has not a first clue of what to do. Conferences, meetings, youth meetings, that's not gonna change anything. You need youth employment, you need youth development.
That's true.
Yeah.
So until we launch our civic duty and do something about our present situation, and I don't want to sound so rhetorical, but if it's not working, change it.
Right. You said you said
Recall.
You said
Recall.
You said civic duty, and sometimes we have to be.
Right. This
We
is
have to
civic duty.
It's repetitive sometimes.
Right.
But you've said that many, as you see many of the politicians, two things: either they don't know city government or they don't care. But you've said definitively that the citizenry is not aware, and when you are not aware, you're not educated politically, therefore you cannot take action. Let's take a look at something that Wendy Thomas wrote that Dr. King spoke about years ago, and he asked, where do we go from here? But Warren said that in the next 10 years, in this article right here,
Right.
his program will reduce poverty by 2% per year.
1% a year.
Did you say 1% or 2%?
1%.
Was it 1%? Okay. Thank you for correcting me. 1%. Well, that's 10%. You just quoted 19%. If I can remember.